And we are
Live stream,
excited to be here. Happy
live stream
Thursday.
Thursday. Happy Thursday, peeps. Been a minute
Yeah.
since I've been on here. Been a
We-
minute since you've been on here.
We've been traveling
Yeah, we've been out on the
out and
road.
about. I'm Erin Watson, and this is,
Jason Martinez.
and we are with Game On Nation. We are a teamwork and communication and communication firm based out of Bradenton, Florida. And if you don't know all about us, you can always find more information on our website, gameonnation.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all across social media, LinkedIn. So find us, connect, and join the chat where you can.
Yeah, and join this chat as well. This is something we do every Thursday at 11:30 Eastern. And so today we're going to be talking about something new.
And not just something new, not a new topic.
We talk about a new topic every Thursday.
Right. But the topic
literally the topic
is something new.
Exactly.
So how do we look at new things that come at us? How do we embrace newness? How do we embrace change? What do those things look like?
Yeah. So, you know the rhythm. You've been here before. We put the Game On blog out on Wednesdays. We want you to read it and sit with it. And then we want you to join us Thursday to break it down and unpack it and figure out what it all means and how we can take the words off of the page and do something practical with it. That's why we're here, because we want to help you in your personal evolution and your personal transformation.
And Jason said it best earlier. Jumping into the chat is invaluable. We want to have a conversation with you. Jason and I talk to each other all the time. So we want to hear from you, the audience. We do talk to each other a lot. But we want to hear from you. We want to engage in that conversation. So jump into the chat. We'll be chatting back, taking questions, and diving into what you want to hear.
Yeah, let's make this interactive and engaging. And then when you jump in, invite your friends too. Okay?
Yeah.
Bring them all. Hello,
DJ.
Okay, hello, DJ. Thanks for jumping in already. If you've been here, you know we're talking about something new. So if you have a thought around that, put it in the chat and we'll discuss it. So let's get into it, shall we?
Let's dive in.
Something new. So if you had the opportunity to look at the blog this week, you would see that Steve teed up this story about being in the farmland and taking it all in and kind of being able to be present in that moment. And in that moment, there were a lot of things that were happening inside of him that really started to allow him to see the world from a different perspective. And so what we're going to talk about now is how we might be able to see the world from a different perspective, because a lot of times we might feel like we plateau. A lot of times we might feel like we might be resistant to change. And so we kind of stay stagnant, if you will, in a certain area without seeking those opportunities to find new perspectives.
And how can we change our mindset? How do we change our mindset around newness? And how do we, if we're leaders in our space, create environments where it's safe for newness and transformation to enter? So how do we do that? And we're going to explore a little bit of that too.
How do we do that? That's a great, Erin, what can you, when you think about transformation in your own life, what might have been some transformational moments in your life? And let me break it down. Transformational moment, like a point in time where you actually felt a new person, a new version of yourself come to life. Not that you're losing out on everything that you were, but you might just feel different, and you're looking at the world different and experiencing things differently.
Yeah. So I have a couple of thoughts on that. So I think of how many times in my life where I've had to go, oh, I get it now. And that's usually when I have one of those transformative experiences. So I guess personal example was when I got married and started cohabitating with another person. And I was a different version of myself. Once you move in with somebody and you're sharing a space, and what I'm kind of laughing about is I always used to watch the show House Hunters. Okay. And people would say it was such a deal breaker when there weren't 2 sinks in the bathroom. And I'm watching it going, it's not that big a deal. Like, you'll be fine. But then I got married and I'm cohabitating with someone and I'm like, oh, I get it now. Yeah. I value my personal space. Okay. I value having time to myself. And so sometimes those transformative experiences highlight the things that you value more and in a different way. So if I didn't try new things, or didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't have learned that about myself necessarily.
And how did you then work through that new experience of being like, oh, I value that, but now I have to change a little bit because of this
Yeah.
new circumstance. How did you deal with that?
Part of it's communication,
Okay.
sharing that I value that. I can't assume someone understands exactly what I need.
Right.
So I value personal space. I
Mhm.
value having order. I value these things. So that communication, but also the fact of having to learn to be flexible. That self-awareness of, although I may value something,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean it's not important to the other person. It's just not in their hierarchy of value.
How do you have that conversation with yourself? Because when we talk about Steve being on his farmland, right? Like he's out there and now he's receiving all of these things while he's sitting out there on his tractor looking out into this space that seemingly never ends.
Mm-hmm.
What's the conversation like with ourselves when we're going through those kinds of transformation?
Your transfer bubble.
When we're going through those types of transformational moments.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question.
I don't think it's much different from the
not.
conversation that you might be having with the other person.
Not at all.
Only thing is now you're internalizing that and you're having that conversation with yourselves. We're essentially saying, I value this thing, but how can I adjust a little bit so that I can invite this new thing into my life?
So
DJ says communication is so key.
Yeah. So another transformative experience is becoming a parent. And when you have kids, it changes things. And, I deal with the question, why?
I thought you said that a transformational experience was becoming a parent. It is apparent.
It is very apparent, but also being a parent. And I get asked the question, why, 5,000 times a day, but also that why moment for yourself. Why is it important to me? And I think that's part of the internal dialogue to answer your question of, why is this important? Why do I need this? And what's going to happen if I just let it go?
Yeah.
Is the other piece.
And
too.
I think that's what it's saying here, like acceptance.
Yes.
Right? Like being able to know that's
huge.
What everything that I was experiencing before this moment was an experience, and there's an acceptance that I can move on and I'm okay to move on. And these new things are happening so that I can move forward into a new version or something, so that something new can take place.
And what happens when you don't accept it too? I mean, think of what that conversation looks like, of resisting things that are coming at you. This is how we've always done it.
Yeah.
How can I embrace newness? Or that's not the way we do things.
Well, I one of the things I like to say with that is, like, people aren't resistant to change. People are resistant to loss.
Oh yeah.
So it's the act of like us having to give something away that that's always belonged to us. Right. And when we think about it, like even in our worst moments, if we think about like losing somebody close to us, right, we know that it's going to change. We have to move through it. Right. But we're struggling with that loss.
Yeah.
In an organization, right, if I own a process and something new occurs where now that process has to change, or I have to give that off to somebody, I'm not resisting the change. I'm resisting the loss of this thing that I feel is mine, or I have ownership in.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it too. Not a good, it's not a good thing, but it's another way to look at it, because I think so many people are like, oh, they don't like change. Don't move their cheese. When that's not necessarily the case. Yeah. It's you have to have a moment of empathy of, we're about to change everything on this person.
Yeah.
How can we help them? So one of the questions I had is, how do we facilitate moments of newness? How do we facilitate transformation as leaders, whether that's in your personal life or your professional life? How do we facilitate newness so it feels like something comfortably uncomfortable, if you will?
If I were going to try to answer that, I would say it's similar to what happened in this scenario on our blog, is that Steve had to go out somewhere. He had to go out somewhere and sit with himself and be alone and be distant from some things, so that he can see how much was out there, so that he can see the opportunity that existed. And so when I think about introducing something new and looking for something new, I think oftentimes it's us removing ourselves potentially from where we are and finding a new place to be. And that could, I'm not saying like a change of environment, right? And that's locally, it's like, it's going from working out in the garage to going outside, right?
Mhm.
It's from going to your local library to visiting a new library in a new state,
Mhm.
right? It's finding a new coffee shop. Like trying to experience a new environment could facilitate some of that transformation and some of that newness that we're looking
For
for.
sure. We're in back to school season, so I know there's a lot of people who are
Not
sending their kids. Not
not
we.
we.
We are not going back to school.
Well,
Well,
kind of,
kind of.
yeah.
But we're in kids going back to school season. I know some parents are doing a happy dance about it. Some have shed some tears, whether that's of joy or pride or whatever it may be. But that's a really new experience for some kids, especially if you have a kid entering kindergarten or, in my case, or you have changing schools, those kinds of things. And I think what made newness not as scary for my kindergartner is information. So we were able to visit the school in advance. We were able to walk him through the process. He was able to see things, touch things, know the process. And I think that translates to adults. He's 5. But if you think of making someone feel informed about what is coming, it can make newness less scary. It can make it less shocking. And it can make something that's like, I can tackle that now that I have more information.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, that can't happen every single time.
Right.
However, when you are asking someone to step into something new, what information can you provide them to make them feel supported and taken care of?
Yeah.
So that's what resonates with me when I've been, in this week of prep work around a kindergartner.
That's good. Like, that's great. Like, how can I prepare myself for something new, right? And DJ here says, turn that fear into excitement and try to find a new perspective. Not easy and takes work. Changing your perspective is part of the process, right? And to your point, Aaron, like sometimes changing perspective might require us to be like, okay, let me build up my courage for this thing. And how can I build up my courage? I can feed myself some information about this thing so that when I go there, I feel a little more comfortable with it. I know that I'm trying to facilitate change within myself, but at least I've given myself the opportunity to be able to wrestle with the thoughts that may come because I'm somewhat informed.
Yes.
But I'm still seeking this thing.
Absolutely. And it makes it more fun to seek it too when you know you can plug in the bits that you can research.
Yeah.
The other piece of this puzzle, I was able to send my kindergartner in on the first day with his older brother. So he had a person that was there with him, showing him the ropes, sending him where he needed to be. So from a professional standpoint, who are your people who facilitate newness, who make it a comfortable experience, who in an onboarding moment makes someone feel welcomed and comfortable and informed? How are we walking by their side? So how can you be that person? How can you set up someone to be that person? It's an imperative in my mind.
Yeah. As you said that, I wrote down circles of trust, right? We'll probably be more receptive to something new or to transformation if we're feeling apprehensive to include people within our circles of trust, right? And then if somebody might be outside of that, to your point, it's like, is the other person demonstrating at least empathy for what I'm going through? But I think circles of trust is so huge. I've had so many transformative moments, I feel, with people that are close to me, right? With experiencing a new thing with someone that's close to me, being able to provide that support and then being able to talk through it. It's important. Like, we have to have this conversation. If somebody's there, have that conversation within our circle of trust. But how do we have this conversation with ourselves? What is the meaning behind that moment of transformation? Why did it occur? What am I taking from it? How can I now take this and move forward into like full transcendence? Like that's a level of deepness that is the soul work.
It is the soul work. There's a lot of soul work and heart work that goes into a lot of this.
Yeah.
We did do a live stream on self-talk too. I'm trying to remember how long ago that was. Blair and I jumped in on that conversation. Right. So if you want to go back in the archives and look at that self-talk piece, because I think that becomes important, because where people around us matter, how we talk to ourselves in moments of newness. We have to be our own circle of trust sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
So
we have to
trust yourself.
How can we, I can imagine being out in these cornfields and having a dialogue with myself, right? So I can imagine what Steve might have been experiencing in that moment with taking in so much, but everything being so still. and actually hearing the thoughts in your mind and having that conversation and like, what does this all mean?
Yeah.
Right. But being able to trust ourselves and have a conversation with ourselves so that we can understand it is huge. So if you get an opportunity, go back, you can check on YouTube and all of the videos that we have on there from previous live streams and take a look at that self-talk video. If you might be wanting to understand more about how to have this conversation with yourself after you experience something new.
Yeah. So a question that I had around this topic is why are we afraid, or why do transformative experiences or newness give us pause?
Yeah.
Let's dig into that for
That's
a second.
Great. Did you have a initial reaction to your own question?
Well, I had to laugh at myself because I don't love change. It's not one of my favorite things. I know there are people who thrive on it, but a very low stakes example, when I go to a restaurant and I find something I really like, the probability of me ordering anything different after that moment is minimal because I'm afraid I'm going to be disappointed and want the thing that I always get. Sounds silly, creature of habit, type A personality. So I'll acknowledge that, but there's that fear of, is it going to be what I want? And is it going to live up to the other thing I love? And I think those two questions.
Ask those two questions again.
So is it going to live up to the thing I love? And am I going to enjoy it as much? Or is it, I asked something else, but I can't exactly remember.
Is it going to live up to my
expectations?
To my expectations.
Yeah, to my prior expectations.
And is it going to be as good as the thing that I love? Is that
think
what you
so.
said? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's deep. I think support is also another key. Our environment too. It's hard to move through alone or surrounded by skepticism. Yes, thank you, DJ. Y'all are awesome. You're awesome too. Thank you for jumping in with us.
Let's see, Rebecca.
I think change is fearful because of the unknown, but also the grieving that takes place in the process. Yes. And Rebecca, thanks for jumping in there. We talked about that, that grieving, that's that loss part. Right?
It is.
So the fear of the unknown is like, you're taking this thing from me, I'm losing this thing. Now what's going to come my way now? What do I do with my hands type vibes, right? Like that's what takes place. But I love what you said, like about why we might be afraid of newness or what's keeping us from embracing newness. And it's that comfortability in where we are and how we've navigated through life. It's knowing that this thing is going to be in its place when I go to it, right? It's knowing that I'm going to have a cup of black coffee at 6:30 in the morning. I don't know why I said 6:30.
I do.
I know. At 6:30 in the morning every day. That repetitiveness, kind of that process, that organization, a lot of times keeps us probably. I would challenge us to be like, if my schedule is so regimented every day, and I know what I'm doing from 6:30 until 6 p.m. at night or 8 p.m. at night or whatever it is. Challenge yourself. You want to introduce something new? Throw that schedule out the window for one day, and then see what happens.
You're making me uncomfortable, Jason.
I got a reaction out of her on that one, right? Like, throw that schedule out of the way. Or adversely, if I'm the person that doesn't have a regimented schedule, what might happen to me? How might I get something new from myself if I create that schedule for myself in one day?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I saw that PR San Juan episode. Hey, Wepa, let's go. Let's go. Awesome. Thank you for watching that. Yes. So and there's so many other great ones that exist as well. So make sure you check those out. But thank you for that. Yeah. So we're talking about transformation, something new, newness, embracing change, what keeps us from seeking change. And this is, I really appreciate this conversation.
I do too. And if you see me staring off into the distance, reason being, I'm sitting here grappling with the question of, does change always come with loss? Does that always happen? Or do we just think it's always going to happen? And that's part of the fear. Does
change always come with loss? Does change
we said fear change, but they're
I don't
fearing
think so,
loss.
I don't
think so.
Change, just like it can be from loss, but it could be from something getting added.
Yeah.
Right?
As a general. Yeah.
So, it could be both sides, right? Like, I have a newborn. I've gained something new in my life, right? But I might lose out on like
some identity pieces,
some
and
identity
those kind of things.
pieces, like living my own life, being out, just doing my thing, right?
Because I was doing that before kids. I was not.
But like, there is some loss, and there's
Mhm.
there's some addition as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, how many times do we get anxious about the thing before the thing happens? Too, I get all these preconceived notions in my brain of what something is going to be, especially new things. And then I walk in and I'll walk away and go, that was not what I was expected. And I spent a lot of emotional energy on something that I didn't need to spend emotional energy on. That happens to me a lot.
So Rebecca says, I don't think we resist change. I think we resist the loss.
Mhm.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah.
You know what? One thing you said there is getting anxious about
Mhm.
the thing. Another way to look at it is that if we just are,
Mhm.
if we're just present in whatever environment we're in, then we might not get the opportunity to be anxious.
Mhm.
The transformation, the something new might occur without us even realizing until later on.
Mhm.
And then when we reflect back, we're like, why am I different now? Why am I moving differently? Why am I thinking differently? And you go back and you're like, oh my gosh, it was that moment. It was that moment in
Mhm.
time that caused this transformation within me, right?
It's a
So
good
yes,
point.
if we think about, I have to find something new, which is a great thing. I think that we should seek something new. But oftentimes, if we're just present, that new thing, we might receive that as well.
See, we talk about, teaching you all new things. I'm so lucky to work with this guy because I get those new insights all the time. And he knows we've been traveling together a lot the last couple of weeks. And I think Jason can see, like, I tend to overthink things and tend to not be as present in the moment as I am. What can I think about 3 moments
Which is helpful
from now?
for me because I probably tend to underthink
Right.
things.
We balance each other pretty nicely. But that notion of being present in the newness
Mm-hmm.
and not being anxious about things that you can't predict.
Yeah.
That's really important. I see, DJ feels very similar. Like, we get very anxious about what hasn't occurred yet, and that's okay. But how can we temper that? How can we balance that so that we're more open and receptive to being in the moment when the newness arrives?
Yeah, that's so good.
What did Maria say? We got some beautiful comments coming
Yeah.
in. So sometimes you have to let go of something good to get something better.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. But we grip onto the good things so hard, we don't realize if we might let go, there might be something much better around the corner. Careers, friends, love, anything. So that resistance to change, because we're worried that what we have right now is so good that we're not open to what could be better.
Right.
That's hard because it's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we embrace that?
Well,
Take us away, Jason.
I guess many things, and I don't know if I'll even go as far as to say is that everything is unpredictable.
It is, yeah.
Even if you map it out,
mm-hmm.
even if you have your schedule and your calendar ready, like, you have to understand that there's going to be moments within that of unpredictability,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you knock over your cup of coffee onto the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and the glass breaks and shatters everywhere, and time starts to compress on you,
your course pivoted.
Right? That's an unpredictable moment, right? Like, if I'm going to the restroom and, like, all of a sudden there's no toilet paper in there, like, that's like, right? Like, the unpredictable moments, right? And I'm being lighthearted and inviting some humor into this, but, like, that type of unpredictability that could kind of throw off our course.
Yes, the example I think of, and I keep coming back to my kids, not the toilet paper one, but I keep coming back to my kids. So I apologize if it's kid heavy, but
or if you have a
pet, well, this is pretty kid specific, unless you take your pet to Disney World, which, hey, good for you. But that moment of, you get to pick one prize before we leave the park. Or before we leave. And they're always worried the next best thing might be at the next store. So they don't ever commit to something, too. Mm-hmm. So I was reading The Places You Will Go to my kids last night. I love
that book.
And there's the waiting place.
Right.
So there's this moment in the book where they get stuck in the waiting place. Mm-hmm. So people waiting to go, or waiting to come, or to go high, or to go low, or what. The waiting place is more terrifying to me than newness. Because you can get in this holding pattern of going nowhere.
The waiting place is more terrifying than newness. So how do we avoid the waiting place?
It's a great question.
right? How do we avoid the waiting place? And I think that has to do with kind of allowing ourselves to just receive and be present.
Mm-hmm.
And
also proactively trying new things too.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't gone into that too much of like,
Yeah,
how
exactly.
can I seek out a new experience? If I feel myself in a holding pattern, if I feel like I'm in a job where I've been there a really, really, really long time and I feel so comfortable, but also feel like something's missing.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with exploring something new, traveling to somewhere new. I don't think Steve ever thought about Willard, Ohio as his next travel destination, but it was a new experience for him and a new level of appreciation for something. So sometimes getting out of the waiting place is making a proactive choice to not be there.
That word you just said, appreciation, right? If we can learn to appreciate all of the things that exist around us, that can open up new perspectives, new brain waves, right? To help us kind of see the world differently. Because the waiting is like we're in this space where everything is just constant and the same and repetitive, and we fail to acknowledge how beautiful the plant is that I bought that's been in my house for 3 months.
Yes.
Because it just becomes mundane and I don't sit with it, right? I fail to acknowledge like the pet that's laying on the floor over there, right? That brings me so much joy, right? But if I don't stop for a moment and pause and reflect and be like, wow, this is really allowing me to receive this space differently. Even small things like that can be transformative moments.
Yeah. So I think, and also if you haven't read Oh, the Places You Will Go in a while, it hits differently as an adult.
Yeah.
And hits differently in different phases of your life. And as we think about newness, what places will you go to? Whether that's literally or metaphorically, how are you seeking out opportunities? How are you seeing potential in things, but also showing appreciation for the things around you? So.
And another part to that is think about the places that you will go when you do those things.
That's true. Yeah. What do you open yourself up
Yeah.
to?
And so with that,
That's
folks,
good.
Look, we're coming up on time right now. This is a 30-minute, kind of quick back and forth with everyone that's on here. Want to get you some information out, want to tell you about Game On, want you to get engaged with us as much as possible. We love having everybody in the chat here, and we want it to be interactive. So look, next Thursday, tell your friends about it. Tell your colleagues about it. Make it a thing. Make it a moment for learning and development for you and your crew. If you're a leader, like this stuff that we're talking about is important, right? This human-centered, this servant leader type vibe, this human, this authenticity, the ways that we can connect with one another. This is important.
And the work is important. I think, instead of a book club moment, have a live stream club moment where
a live stream club
and
moment.
Jason knows I love a good book club.
Yeah.
So I mean, but yeah, have your team watch this. Come
and
together.
Aaron knows I love a good
live stream. Exactly. For balance each other, right? But find that moment where you can watch and discuss with somebody. You can, again, chat in with us, but how are you connecting with your colleagues over this topic and maybe giving them that communication moment of insight into why you are the way you are or where you want to be and how you can support each other and build those circles of trust.
Definitely. All right, peeps. Well, our song of the week is New Morning by Bob Dylan. And since we're up on time, I won't go through much of it here. I certainly won't sing it because honestly, before I found this song this week, I wasn't really big on Bob Dylan. I knew some of his songs. I heard some of them, but it's just like poetry. And it really speaks to experiencing something new and looking for something new and how that might facilitate transformation. So if you get a chance, listen to that song at some point today. And that is New Morning. That is New Morning by Bob Dylan. Casey Kasem here. That is New Morning by Bob Dylan.
Straight DJ.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much. This was super fun. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Jason. And again, you can connect with us all across social media, share the live stream, watch past episodes, but more than anything, engage in conversation with each other, with us, and just be well.
All right. See y'all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Later.